So tonight I want to share my thoughts on the 1983 animated flick Fire and Ice. This was the collaboration between two masters, you know, one animated master and one illustrator master. This was the Ralph Bakshi and Frank Frazetta team up. It was like two masters getting together and teaming up. Now, Bakshi was known for making these adult-oriented animated flicks. Started off with Fritz the Cat, and then moved on to movies like Wizards. He did the animated version of Lord of the Rings. If you haven't checked that one out, man, that's a classic. You got to see that one. And did this movie Fire and Ice in the early 80s, and teamed up with a master of the fantasy barbarian world of illustration and paintings and comics and book covers, Frank Frazetta. And Frank Frazetta, I mean, I think that most people have seen some Frank Frazetta paintings out there. If you don't know who he is, you probably have seen his works. These are the shirtless muscle barbarians, the scantily clad, voluptuous females. Often there was some type of a mythical or magical beast that was also in his paintings as well. Awesome. I mean, just amazing works of art. And these two masters got together and worked on basically their version of a barbarian Conan type of a fantasy movie. So Fire and Ice, just to give a quick synopsis of the movie itself, it starts off with the young man Larn, whose village is destroyed by this advancing glacier of ice, and it just, you know, totally destroys his village, and he's the sole survivor. And so he goes on this quest to basically avenge the destruction of his village. And along the way, he meets Tigra, who is the daughter of King Gerald. King Gerald is the good king, the good leader of Firekeep. And so it's kind of like the cold is this advancing glacier, and that's the realm of Lord Necron. He's the evil ice lord who you know, lives there on this moving glacier. And good King Gerald is towards a warmer climate. You know, he lives by fire and lava. So again, fire and ice, and it's kind of this fantasy take on good versus evil, using fire and ice as the analogy. And man, the movie, one thing about the movie that really sticks out when you first see the movie, especially if you were a youngster seeing the movie back in the day, was the animation. Because the animation's like, wow. I mean, you see it and you're like, damn, these people, these characters on the screen look realistic. They look amazing. And it's because they use this animation technique called rotoscoping. It's been around for many, many years. You know, so many different animated flicks, Disney flicks, back in the day, you know, 1930s, 40s flicks, or shorts, used rotoscoping. It's basically where they film live actors and then draw over the film. They basically trace the film onto some type of the animated work. And what it does, it causes these ultra realistic movements, and you know, things that you just can't get through traditional animation. Now, I think what Fire and Ice did was it took it to the whole other level, where there is so much rotoscoping that was done throughout the entire movie. Now, on one hand, you could say, well, that's kind of a cost-cutting measure, you know. I mean, does it take away from some of the artistic element of the artist who's animating a creature or a person or whatever? And you know, was it done to just kind of spit this out real quick? I would say, man, I mean, if that was the case, that's fine, that's great, but I think it's awesome because it provides not only this ultra realistic animation, but it also gives you a sense of real people who are acting. Like, there are real actors behind this who are providing the template for these characters. And if you think about today, you know, this world of computer animation that we have today, where so many movies rely on computer graphics, we're using a technique that had its roots in rotoscoping. All the motion capture or performance capture that you see now in the movies, you know, where they are actually using real live actors and then translating that into some computer animated characters. I mean, movies like Avatar and movies like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, you know, they all use performance capture. They all use motion capture to get a sense of the characters' movements, of their performance on screen. And all of that, man, kind of goes back to this old school rotoscoping technique. In my eyes anyway, it really does. And you see that, and wow, you see the movie and you're like, oh my goodness, it's just amazing. I think that some of the pluses with the movie, I mean, you really get a sense of the artistry that went into creating the movie. I mean, I don't think Frank Frazetta did any of the paintings in the movie itself. He may have, I don't believe so, but there were a number of very well accomplished artists who worked on that movie. Like, you know, Thomas Kincaid, he's a very well-known artist, or was a very well-known artist. The dude died, but a painter. Like, I think my mom has a Thomas Kincaid painting at her house, and he worked on Fire and Ice. And you see some of these accomplished artists who worked on this beautiful animated movie. Now, negatives, I mean, you're not going to watch the movie for, like, I mean, you don't watch these movies for a deep, engaging story like, you know, some other movie that's got this real involved. You watch it for the artistry. You watch it because it's fantasy. Yeah, you're gonna watch it and you're gonna like, man, this girl is scantily clad. How is she not freezing? How is she not frozen? How is she not dead? How is this girl still alive in this frozen ice palace? You know, I mean, so you just forgive that kind of stuff because you're like, man, well, hey, this is a fantasy flick. I know she's barefoot. I know the girl is like 95% naked, but you're watching it because it's a work of art. You know, you're watching it because it's a cool fantasy flick. So anyway, just my thoughts on the 1983 classic Fire and Ice. If you haven't checked it out, I'd highly recommend it. Word on the streets is that Robert Rodriguez is working on an updated version, a live action version. You know, I'm always a little bit wary when I hear about remakes, but sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. You know, it's kind of hit and miss. But you know, if he has any respect for that movie and what it showcased and in terms of visual artistry, man, then maybe it's got a good chance of being a good flick. But I would go check it out. If you are a fan at all of barbarian movies, of fantasy flicks, go check it out. It really is like a Conan movie. It's kind of, again, Frazetta's and Bakshi's take on a Conan movie. Got that He-Man feel to it. I think it came out the same year that He-Man did. And so, you know, both of them, you could say, you know, have their roots in Conan and those types of fantasy flicks. So anyway, go check it out. 1983 Fire and Ice. This is SoopaBee.
about elements when the war draws near to us every hour?
Princess Tigra, we all have our duty. Your father's duty is to be king and lead. Your brother's duty is to soldier. And your duty is to learn.
You mean my duty is to stay shut up, while all the men do the fighting and share all the glory? Well, we think that stinks.